Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Friday, October 2nd, 2020. And here are our top stories. Fewer Americans dabble in the stock market, and black execs hit a ceiling. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Devin Banerjee. He's Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn. He's also the editor of the This Week in Finance newsletter, which of course you can find on the LinkedIn platform. You just got to find Devin's name. Devin, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Absolutely, Jeff. Always good to be with you.
I wasn't even going to welcome you, Devin. I was going to just say, hey, thanks for staying with us. So,
well, as usual, we've been chatting for about 10 minutes, so the viewers don't see that.
No, they don't. I think there's a whole bunch of people that want to see my outtakes because I blow the beginning and I always blow the ending. Anyway, Devin, lots going on. In all seriousness, there's two important topics I know you want to talk about. And as I said in my lead-in, based on one of the big stories on the LinkedIn platform, fewer Americans are actually dabbling in the stock market. What can you tell us?
That's right, Jeff. This is based on some new data out of the Pew Research Center this week. So if we take a step back and think about what you and I have been talking about over the past 5-6 months, it's been this divergence in the recovery from the economic downturn. And it's what many people are referring now to as a K-shaped recovery. Well, for one, the economy going in one direction, the stock market going in another direction. Those who are doing well or who were doing well pre-pandemic doing even better. Those who were suffering even more. But the reality is, on that first point I made about the economy going in one direction, the stock market going in another, the reality is that most Americans don't actually have a real stake in the stock market. You know, the stock market bounce, the rapid recovery we've seen from the March lows are really passing, most Americans by. So according to a ton of new data out, just a modest majority, about 55% of Americans own stocks. And that's, for some people, that's actually quite a healthy number, 55%. But if you look under the hood, that's mainly through retirement accounts, so IRAs, 401ks. If you look at the Pew data on who is holding stocks personally outside of retirement accounts, then you're talking about 1/3 of adults here in the U.S. holding stocks, bonds, or mutual funds outside of their retirement accounts. So, to some people, 1/3 sounds pretty healthy, but if you think about this rapid recovery, as I said, we're having in the stock market, that's passing about 2/3 of adults by. And if we go a bit deeper under the hood even more, those who are holding stocks in the U.S. are predominantly already wealthy, right? They're asset owners. They hold these financial assets. They're also predominantly white, as a matter of fact. And we'll get into a lot of the implications of this later on and in the next segment of the show. But talking about the wealthy holding these stocks, according to Federal Reserve data, the wealthiest 10% of Americans, of American households, hold about 83% of household-owned shares here in the U.S. That, the flip of that, the corollary is that the bottom 90% of professionals here in the U.S. are owning just 17% of stocks. So again, these numbers are not very new, but a lot of people are talking about it this week based on this new data. And again, based on what we've been talking about the past few months with the stock market recovery, the implication is just that a lot of Americans are missing out on that right now.
Look, I think you're right, because a lot of people tie what's happening economically to the stock market, and sometimes they're aligned, they run parallel, and sometimes they don't, and in not all cases they do. One thing that I think is really important that's often overlooked is when you talk about retirement savings and retirement vehicles, there are over 70 million Americans, Devin, that do not have access to a 401k or employer-based retirement system. So if you just take the numbers that Pew and that you're discussing from Pew, and you just kind of overlay that, and most people do have access to mutual funds and stocks and bonds through their 401k or their workplace retirement plan. There's a whole swath of people that don't. So where are they getting access? They're getting access if they open up an IRA. Well, that's going to be more expensive. So maybe they're not going to invest there. Maybe they're going to have a bank account. So there's clearly a lot of work to be done in terms of parity, in terms of creating opportunity for people of all ethnic and all economic stripes.
Yeah, and those retirement access numbers are so important. But even just looking at the percent of households owning stocks, that's actually trended downward quite significantly over the past 20 years. Looking at Gallup data, stock ownership actually peaked in 2002. That is when about two-thirds of Americans, 67%, reported owning stock. It was 65% pre-Great Recession in about April 2007. And today, as I said, it's that modest majority of about 55%. So that really points to something more psychological that could point to this millennial generation aging into adulthood and being captured by this data now, and perhaps feeling burned from the crisis, from the last crisis, and that's why stock ownership has fallen, or they are not even able to budget and save enough to consider investing. It could also point to education. As a matter of fact, earlier this week, I sat down with Carrie Schwab Pomerantz, one of the foremost advocates for financial literacy and a trusted source of personal finance advice. She's Senior Vice President at Charles Schwab, of course. And she really went on and on about how fewer people, or not enough people, are educated about not just stock ownership or equity ownership in particular, but investing generally, and the merits of investing and how to do so properly with a responsible long-term strategy. We spend a lot of time talking about earning, which is important, then about budgeting, very important, saving. But the next step after all of that is thinking about an investment plan. And we, meaning society, probably does not talk about that enough.
Yeah, no, you're speaking, that's music to our ears, and one of the reasons why we have this network, Devin. There needs to be unbiased advice, education for people to understand the basics of budgeting, basics of saving. How do you buy a home? What does it mean to buy a home? Sometimes it's really hard to discern what is, when you're looking at a sales pitch versus what is unbiased. And I think that can turn a lot of people off. And look, when you have a big task at hand, oftentimes if you go, I'll use working out, dieting. If you have a big task and you want to lose 20 pounds, you want to lose that 20 on the first day, right? So you don't eat, you work out all day long, and you look at the scale and, oh, geez, I only lost half a pound, and that was probably water weight.
Right.
And so it's setting these meaningful goals and meaningful objectives ahead of you. And how do you eat an elephant? You bite it, eat it one bite at a time. And I'm not advocating killing elephants, by the way, but just using it as a metaphor that it's so big, you got to chop it up into little pieces.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Well, Devin, I want to go to a quick break. But from this topic, which is an important topic, to another important topic, Black execs have hit a ceiling. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Devin Banerjee. He's Senior Financial Services Editor for LinkedIn. Devin, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Absolutely, Jeff. Happy to.
So, this is a really important show. We talked about how Americans overall are not really invested in the stock market. That's a problem, budgeting and saving. This is another concerning issue. We've talked on and on about this on this network about diversity of teams, diversity in terms of executive leadership. And it seems based on, I know you're going to talk about this, that based on some studies that Black Americans are kind of hit a ceiling when it comes to executive leadership in some of our largest companies.
That's right, Jeff. This is based on a great story I should mention and give credit to in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week. And this is looking specifically at Black executives in the CEO role, the top rung of the ladder. So let's start with some data. Among Fortune 500 companies, the largest 500 companies in the U.S., if we look over time, the number of CEOs who are minorities generally or who are women has ticked up over the past 10, 20 years. We should acknowledge that. But it's Black CEOs in particular who have made little to no progress and really hit that ceiling in the data. So today, of those Fortune 500 companies, 4 of them had a Black CEO. That's about 1%. The numbers are not that much better, even looking at those rungs of the corporate ladder leading to the C-suite and leading to the CEO job. So among U.S. companies with at least 100 employees, Black professionals hold about 3% of those executive or senior level jobs leading into the CEO job. So obviously an issue with the pipeline there as well. So the big question, of course, is why is this the case? The numbers are here in front of us. It's clear that things are terrible. What are the reasons? And the great reporting from the Journal, as well as some other reporting we did this week and we curated this week, pointed me to a couple drivers I'm going to run through. Number one is that companies are, they're invested in recruiting diverse talent. There's been a lot of money and a lot of effort pumped into that for early stage career recruiting, college recruiting, et cetera. But these companies are tending to overlook retention and advancement as people progress into mid-career and then toward that those prime years, if you will, when they should be climbing the corporate ladder. There's not enough attention or investment focused there. A lot of it is being funneled to early stage recruiting. Number two I'll mention is that leaders, especially the existing CEOs, are not as personally invested in this issue as they should be. It's really been bottom up so far. A lot of the true investment and effort, it's come from the recruitment organizations in these companies or the HR roles at these companies, but not enough CEOs have been kind of personally invested, spending actual time and actual effort. Now, of course, we have seen that change over specifically recent months, but even over recent years. One thing you and I, Jeff, talked about 2 months ago was how boards of directors, for example, are starting to incentivize CEOs in particular around building diverse teams at those higher rungs of the corporate ladder, incentivizing them with their compensation, small percentages, but meaningful amounts of their compensation tied to diversity targets. So we're seeing that happen more and more. But what's important when the CEO gets involved is it creates mentors for Black professionals from the top down, as well as from bottom-up efforts. But those mentors toward the top, are relationships, and relationships are absolutely vital to helping talent advance, whether it's Black talent or all talent. So with that lack of relationships right now, what we're seeing is Black professionals who are advancing in their careers are typically being funneled into roles that are not stepping stones to that CEO job. So rather than, gaining P&L responsibilities or, broad responsibilities for profit and loss, they're being funneled into roles such as marketing or human resources, for example. And look, the data is showing that Black executives are doing well in those roles. There was a Stanford study from April showing chief administration officers, chief sales officers, chief human resource officers are representing the Black workforce, and Black executives are holding those roles in good percentages. But again, those aren't stepping stones into the CEO job.
Devin, is this you mentioned boards of directors. Is this something that activists, shareholders might take notice of? And we talk often on the show about ESG. Is this something like a factor that an ESG investor would look at and say, hey, I'm going to look at this organization. I'm going to look at the how the organization appoints leadership and what goes into that?
That's a great point, because what we always talk about is that investors, those holding the purse strings, if you will, have large sway over management teams and boards of directors. I would say, as a financial journalist, I have noticed a lot more asset owners, those big pools of capital around the world, focusing on ESG, of course. And the G in ESG, corporate governance, really does often capture diversity among corporate executives and officers and directors of those companies. So there certainly are some organizations out there. I can think of Just Capital, for example. By the way, I would encourage people to check out their CEO, Martin Whitaker, on the LinkedIn platform. He's one of our LinkedIn influencers, often talking about what those factors are that they are trying to measure and they are trying to provide to other investors and pools of capital as they rate companies. They are including diversity in that corporate governance umbrella, and so that is certainly happening more and more. Boards of directors, as I said, are feeling the pressure and seeing the research, of course, that diversity is very important to performance. It leads to outperformance, and so they are starting to incentivize their management teams, their CEOs, by tying those goals and those metrics to compensation and to other incentives. So we're certainly seeing those holding the purse strings and those holding the power starting to wake up to this issue.
And that's a good thing. Well, Devin, 2 great stories this week. I want to thank you so much for coming on the program, sharing your insight, but also sharing the perspectives of those on the LinkedIn platform. Have a great rest of the week and a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Sounds good, Jeff. Take care.
Thanks, Devin. Great to see you. Thanks for sharing your perspective. And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow with our weekly retrospective show, BRN Weekly. We've got a very special interview, and we'll be taking a look at some of our best segments for the week. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.